Part of the problem we're seeing with this renewable transition is that we're seeing grid systems pushed by regulators and ultimately by politicians and activists into moving our energy economy towards completely unproven energy sources. And it will fundamentally damage human life if they get it wrong. And it does damage human life when they get it wrong. So for every megawatt hour, and that's just a grid number that we throw out, for every megawatt hour of blackout, 3 lives are lost on average in the West. So energy and energy stability is fundamental for human life. So when we talk about the sustainability of Bitcoin mining, we're incentivized to use as much energy to test as many different energy sources as possible and give them the best kind of test, which is baseload, 24/7, 7 days a week. Can this thing be useful for humankind?
Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin. We have a brand new podcast. Visit myprivacy.help to subscribe. Did you know you can completely control your personal information without relying on a third party? Faris, Gordon, and industry experts explain how you can reclaim control of your data, your privacy, your life. Visit myprivacy.help.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Basics podcast. You are here with Faris and Gordon. Today's date of recording is the 5th of June, 2023. The price of Bitcoin is $26,825. That will get you 3,700 Satoshis per dollar. And Gordon, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks, mate. And we had a fascinating interview with Daniel from #X/AFI, but we'll explain that in a second. And we have interviewed a few people before in regards to mining, but I think you'll really appreciate this one in terms of basically accessibility and how Bitcoin mining obviously is for institutions and large companies, but it's for individuals as well. So if you've got Bitcoin, whether you've got it or not, have a listen to this interview, because I think you'll find that it's really going to the next level of, okay, I've got some Bitcoin, but what can I do with it? You know, I'm just sort of hodling it in my cold storage wallet or whatever. I could go to, what's that company, Faris, that offers 8% interest on
I think they're all gone by now, aren't they, dude?
Yeah, they're probably all bankrupt. So yeah. Don't do that anyway. This is really a great way to earn some passive income on the Bitcoin you've already got, and a private way to do it soon. But we can just go to the interview. But Faris, what did you think?
I saw Daniel speak at Bitcoin Alive conference in Sydney, and he explained mining Bitcoin in a short time exceptionally well. And he does it here too. He explains, he just explains it simply and succinctly. And I've assumed after his presentation, I just made sure to meet him, introduce myself to him. And here we are today. One thing I forgot to mention in the intro is our block height, 792,926. So we're closing in on 800,000 blocks in Bitcoin, guys, not far off a million. But anyways, without further ado, we're going to leave it to Daniel, who is from AFI, which is Australian Fintech Infrastructure, and he's going to talk to us about Bitcoin mining.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Daniel. Now, I just want to say, it was great meeting you at Bitcoin Alive in Sydney, and awesome to have you on the show. Now, tell us, what is it that you do? Because you are into Bitcoin mining, which is still around, apparently, still going well. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, your Bitcoin origin story, and what you're up to today.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, no, true. Contrary to popular belief, Bitcoin mining didn't die thanks to FTX. It still is around, live and kicking. Amazing event, Bitcoin Alive. It was a pleasure. Met so many people there. It was kind of a blur of a day. But I'm Daniel. I'm really into Bitcoin mining. I got into mining really early on, but not in a huge way. So back in, must have been 2011 or 2012, I turned my GPU over to mine Bitcoin. Back in just as kind of GPUs were losing their profitability. So probably only mined about 0.1 of a Bitcoin. So I wasn't one of those cool people that ended up with, 50 or 100 Bitcoin in my wallet. And then I forgot about Bitcoin for a few years. I got busy building a traditional business in the software space. Got busy learning the world of the world of let's call it a TradFi or a fiat-based business. And then after a rather crunching lawsuit that brought that to an end in 2017, I really began to relook at crypto and obviously bought shitcoins because everyone did back in 2017. And then over a process probably of about 12 months, realized that Bitcoin honestly was where the real value is in the whole market. And then I began to look at ways of maximizing, obviously my current savings account, which is when in 2018, I bought my first mining rig. And then from there began to really go super deep down the rabbit hole of getting orange pilled, working out, where the value is, how we're revolutionizing money. But more than that, I kind of got addicted to this magical thing called Bitcoin mining, which was turning energy into Bitcoin. And so for me, that's always made so much sense. And one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about proof of work is that Bitcoin for me isn't a very magical, ethereal thing. It's a very grounded, very real thing. Like I can show you rooms and show you hot, sweaty chambers where the Bitcoin is being made and where it's going on. So for me, I come at Bitcoin from this perspective. It's almost a physical thing that we get to digitally transform around the globe. So that's a little bit of my Bitcoin backstory. Today, I work as the head of sales for a kind of a new venture called AFI, or Australian Fintech Infrastructure. So we're building out large-scale mining operations in partnership with a couple of the major manufacturers in South Australia. So there's a lot of really cool opportunity, and I'm sure we'll get into it around the renewable transition to renewable energy, but also that kind of leaves a lot of opportunity on the table for energy, and especially, contrary to popular belief, energy opportunity here in Australia and in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's what I'm doing today.
Yeah, so let me jump in. Sorry, Gordon. The non-tech guys are just going to jump in very quickly. Very keen to get into that. Just for our non-tech savvy, have to comb your hair to go to work audience, what does GPU stand for?
That's a graphics processing unit. So that's your graphics card. That's the thing that you use to play Call of Duty and Fortnite.
Yeah, and that's the same graphics card that people needed to use to mine Bitcoin. It's the same. This is why like shares of NVIDIA just went insane.
Exactly. So the progression for Bitcoin was that originally in the Bitcoin white paper, Satoshi mentions one CPU, one vote. So the first mining happened on a CPU, which is really, really, it's the oldest form of computing as we would recognize it today. So that every computer, whether it's a Windows or a Mac, has a CPU. So that was the original idea. And then people worked out it was really efficient to start mining it on the graphics card of the computer. So they built some different code and ran it through the graphics card. And then some really, really smart people thought, hang on, we can just get rid of all of the extra bits of silicon that we don't need, and we can make what's called an ASIC, or an application-specific integrated circuit. And so today what we have is these ludicrously efficient ASIC miners that are probably 1 million times more efficient at mining Bitcoin than the original CPU in your laptop that Satoshi would have been mining on. So
I appreciate it. This is something we've covered before, Daniel, but I saw your presentation at Bitcoin a lot, and I thought you explained it extremely well. So I wanted to get you to do it again. So thank you.
Oh no, that's all, no problem.
Cool. The amateur will now sit in the corner. And sorry, Gordon, you take over.
Well, we'll get into how Bitcoin's killing babies and boiling oceans in a minute.
I heard that too.
But but before we get there, two questions. One, were you merge mining Namecoin back in 2012, and how much Dogecoin did you mine? And two, you mentioned this proof of work stuff, and we have done plenty of podcasts about Bitcoin mining, but I think it's worth revisiting. Could you give us a 39-word explanation of proof of work and how that relates to Bitcoin mining, and why Bitcoin mining? Why are you excited about Bitcoin mining? Why don't you just give a blood sample to Coinbase and buy Bitcoin there?
Awesome. So I want to claim this right now, and you can check my blockchain history. I have actually never mined or merge mined the meme coin. And actually, the only coin that I have mined other than Bitcoin is Ethereum, because when I got back into it, I was also running a gaming PC company, so I had lots of those graphics processing units hanging around. But I converted it all instantly to Bitcoin because that's where the real value was. So what is proof of work in 39 words? Let's see if I can get there. Initially, let's just use the word cryptocurrency. Back to its purest form. What does that word really mean? That means it's a currency based on cryptography. So it's in the name. Cryptography is a special kind of maths that's used to make things secret, or it's used to protect things. So Bitcoin is the true cryptocurrency. So it requires a special kind of maths to protect it and keep it safe from all vectors of attack. And it does this through a method called proof of work, which means that there are computers all around the world guessing the answer to a cryptographic question. So I like to explain it to people like this at a very, very basic level. The Bitcoin mining network creates a big cloud of maths, and in that cloud of maths is the correct answer to confirm the block, to confirm the next block. So thanks to the big cloud of maths, it becomes really impossible, like almost the same chance of you just trying to reach up and pick some moon dust up with your two fingers, for Bitcoin to become hacked or to become unlocked or to become unsecure in any way. So this incentive to mine creates so much difficulty, computationally speaking, that it becomes incredibly unlikely. I call it nigh on impossible for anyone to crack any one transaction or any one private key on the Bitcoin network. So in a real simple terms, the more computing, the more power there is going on into that mining space, the more secure Bitcoin becomes, the more unlikely a vector of attack comes. I recently described it as Bitcoin is performing a reverse hack on itself every 10 minutes. And by reverse hacking itself, it incentivizes people to constantly keep the network secure. So forward hacking doesn't work anymore. You can't brute force attack. I might have got a little bit complex there.
No,
that was
that's
really
all good.
good.
And we've talked about proof of work, and we even did an episode on proof of work versus proof of stake. So we don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But going back to your passion of Bitcoin mining, and don't worry, I've mined all sorts of coins, so I'm guilty of that as well. But why Bitcoin mining? So, for example, if someone has $10,000, why wouldn't they just go into exchange, buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin instead of going through all this proof of work to buy machines, to buy whatever to produce Bitcoins? That seems like a hassle.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. So that's the let's call it the investment case for Bitcoin mining. So I like to think of Bitcoin mining as locking Bitcoin up, because let's be honest, you could take that $10,000 and go and buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin today. It'd be about 0.4 of a Bitcoin at today's rate. So why would you not take the 0.4 of a Bitcoin? Well, buying a Bitcoin miner is like buying a term deposit on Bitcoin. It's like buying an interest-bearing Bitcoin account, because you are getting paid in Bitcoin, to keep this computer online 24/7, to look after it, to power it, and to keep it maintained. And the theory is that over the life of your hardware, you should receive net more Bitcoin than you could have purchased just with your $10,000 today. So that depends on a lot of factors. And actually, to be honest, it's a really great discussion to get into, because a lot of people buy a lot of stupidly expensive miners when the going looks really good. They also spend money on stupidly expensive power when the going looks good, only to discover in the middle of a bear market that really high price and that really high power bill mean that they may not get their $10,000 worth of Bitcoin back out of their hardware. However, as long as you've done your numbers correctly, and this is going back to actually what I spoke about at Bitcoin Live, I have a principle which is beware the bear. Make sure your bear market mining plan can survive what happens in a bear market. Because if it can survive what happens in a bear market, your bull market case will be awesome. It'll be absolutely amazing. So you got $10,000. If your power price is good enough and you're not overpaying for your machine, you should end up over the course of 3 years with more Bitcoin, and usually a multiple of the amount of Bitcoin back into your wallet than you could have spent on a mining machine today. So in some ways, we talk about the time value of money when it comes to Bitcoin, especially when it comes to hodling. So we want to take our value and then lock it up, because it's going to have a higher purchasing power because of the scarce asset into the future. Well, Bitcoin mining is almost a way of guaranteeing a higher purchasing, a higher value into the future. And more than that, it requires the work to keep it going, which is that constant power bill, any maintenance that needs to go on, any problems. So the investment case for Bitcoin is foundationally based on your two key inputs. What's your power price and how much are you paying for your mining rig? And I can absolutely guarantee you that in every market, there is an opportunity where that makes a lot of sense. And as we go into often bear market conditions, the numbers actually tend to get better in favor of Bitcoin mining, partly because less miners want to buy power. So power often becomes cheaper. There becomes all these market opportunities around power. The other side of it is that hardware often becomes cheaper. In fact, not often, always becomes cheaper, because it's sold on how much Bitcoin it can produce every year. That's how it derives its value. So what we're already beginning to see in the market is a little bit of a tipping point. So the reason for it is honestly those two clear factors. What is your power price and how much are you paying for your mining rigs?
So Daniel, when you say overpay for your miner, does that mean you're buying a brand new miner that's a beast of a machine that in 6 months or a year's time won't have that competitive advantage? Or what does that mean? How can you overpay for a miner?
So look, I'll probably talking about a few industry secrets here, but that's okay. So mining rigs usually sell at a multiple of their daily revenue. So for instance, if my mining rig is making $20 per day, for instance, I as a retailer will want to sell it at, let's say, 500 days. So that's a nice, easy number to understand. 500 times 20 is $10,000 for that mining rig. So if I, as a consumer, am going out to the market and thinking, all right, I'm willing to lock my Bitcoin up for 500 days, and then I'm making more Bitcoin than I tied up, I would be overpaying if I go out to the market and then pay 600 days for that revenue. So for instance, I would then go and pay $12,000 for my equipment, when realistically, maybe I was targeting, 500 days. Again, this all depends a lot on your cost of power. So the general rule is the more expensive your cost of power is, you have to then become very, very careful about the capital that you expend on your mining rig. So the two are inversely linked. So the lower your cost of electricity, you're going to be profitable for a lot longer. Therefore, you can actually afford to, you don't want to, but you can afford to pay the market more for your hardware, because you're going to have less costs over time. So again, when thinking about this clearly, in a bull market, you have to be very, very careful, because of course, what a miner doing $20 per day, if you multiply the Bitcoin price by 5, it's now going to be doing $100 per day. That means retailers are going to want to charge more. If they're going to sell it at 500 days revenue, they're now going to charge $50,000 for that mining rig. So of course, you might say, well, what risk am I taking? Am I going to get my money back sooner because it's because the price might go up? Do we look like we're at the top of the market? Is it going to go down? The general rule is no one really knows. But all I can say is that it's very easy to tell the bottom of a market, especially in mining, because people almost will give mining rigs away. They almost become e-waste. And so at that point in time, it's a signal that we're, number one, somewhere near the bottom of a price, but also that you can buy miners at quite low multiples of their daily revenue.
So what are the dangers of buying a used miner? Say you jump on Amazon or eBay and you want to get yourself because I know you can get for like $250 now.
Yeah. Look, there's a reasonable there's a reasonable amount of risks for it. The basic one is that it doesn't work. It arrives and it's dead on arrival. That's where, look, the reputation of the seller, maybe the platform that you're buying it through, really comes into play. Can you get your money back if the worst case happens? The other dangers, just generally, are that your miner might become obsolete. So we're seeing this less of an issue now, partly because with ASICs particularly, they were a new invention in 2013 when the earliest ASIC miners really hit the market. And so what we had ASIC miners starting off on kind of, let's call it the last generation silicon. And then as the market grew, we saw like the hockey stick growth all the way, so it was catching up with Moore's law. So ASIC miners were doubling or trebling their power almost every 6 months. So a new miner would come out and it would kind of make everything that was more than a year old completely obsolete. What we're seeing now is that the ASIC miners that are coming out, for instance, are on the very, very latest cutting edge silicon. So now the market has kind of started to come to maturity. So previously, look, if you were thinking of buying a secondhand miner, the big question you'd have in your back of your mind is, what is Bitmain going to release next year that will destroy my profitability? Let's just put the difficulty through the roof. Today, that's become less of an issue. That you can probably buy anything within the last 2 years and have a reasonable idea that it's not going to be completely destroyed over the next 12 months. You're just going to follow the incremental decrease in mining returns thanks to difficulty. So those are the two big ones. The other side of things is, can you fix problems if they go wrong? Because that's a big risk. If you're not, let's say, if you've never fixed a computer, it might not be a good idea for you to try and fix your ASIC mining machine. The ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Could be a good way to learn, though.
Yeah, no. If you want to get hands-on, it's a good bit of fun if you treat it like a hobby.
You mentioned many. Sorry,
I'll jump in real quick. I did buy a couple with the expectation they weren't going to work. I just wanted to set them up, and they were cheap. Like the cost of postage was more than a miner.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was basically that I just want to see how these things actually work. And they are loud, as people warn you. They're like, oh, how loud can it be? They're freaking loud.
They can be really loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
I call them the nuclear air raid siren.
Yeah. So no, and I did that. I set up a couple just because I'll just have some fun. So they seem to be working, then they're not working, but I am just playing. And that I basically bought it with the intention of, I doubt they'll work, but I just want to play around and see how these things actually work. But yeah, that was my experience, and which is why I'm looking at I'll set up a miner somewhere where I'm not living. I'll get someone to do that for me.
Yeah, it's the marriage saving product.
So you
Sorry,
mentioned a
Gordon.
couple of interesting points, Daniel.
Yeah.
And we could talk about the computational power of the network, the hashing rate, and price and fluctuations and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, when you're in the middle of a bear market or the bear market sort of bottomed, is a fantastic way to buy a miner and get stuck into it.
Yeah.
So you've got hobbyists. I've dabbled in mining. Not currently mining, but I have in the past. All the way to these massive, mining farms. You've also mentioned electricity. Is it profitable or not? This is not a trolley question, by the way.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Is Bitcoin mining sustainable?
100%, yes. And I'll preface my answer with a little bit of philosophy. So in human history, every time we've had an incentive to generate or to transform energy into usable energy, so whether that was firewood in the cave or coal in the Industrial Revolution, or today, wind, gas, solar, hydro, all the forms of energy that we make as a human race, it's always been driven by human development. So we've had to build a city, or we've had to have a human settlement, or it required this social need to make our lives better. And with Bitcoin mining, for the first time in human history, we actually have this incentive to generate unlimited energy. So as long as we can keep producing energy cheap enough, we can make a financial gain. And humans rely on incentives. Human activity is motivated by economic incentive fundamentally. And so now with Bitcoin mining, because we have a capital income attached to an energy source, doesn't matter where it is in the world. It can be in the middle of Africa. As long as we can get an internet connection there, we can make money. And so because of that incentive, human beings actually have this economic incentive to start developing, start exploring, start making energy cheaper, start making it more stable, because the longer my miner can be online, the more capital I can make. And so what this is generating is it's generating a demand even from Bitcoin miners themselves to start to be the first movers in some of this new energy technology. So for instance, a Bitcoin miner isn't a life or death situation. It's a money or no money situation. So that means that we're far more likely to take risks on a brand new power generation source. And I can give you an example, for instance, of hydrogen energy storage is one of those ones that I know is going on. It's not a real proven technology yet. Grid operators are a bit wary of it being on the network. They're not quite sure about it. But when Bitcoin miners hear that they have the potential of being able to buy energy at 3 cents per kilowatt hour, 24 hours a day, they jump on it. Because even if they have a problem and you're offline for a couple of days, it's not a big issue. The economic incentive for that is there for us to go and pay whoever is inventing that technology, or if it's cheap enough to buy that technology, just for the purpose of being online and hashing on the network. Now, the cool side effect of that is that proves those technologies. It proves that they work. We do a lot of the R&D on can this thing actually support human life? We begin to put in place the distribution channels. We're incentivizing these companies to scale up production, to drop the cost of the cost of energy for everyone, because we are willing to be the first customer. We're willing to try the new thing, and we can actually do it without hurting human life. Now, part of the big problem that we're seeing in the energy industry, and obviously being a Bitcoin miner, I have my finger on the energy industry almost more than I have on the Bitcoin market price, Part of the problem we're seeing with this renewable transition is that we're seeing grid systems pushed by regulators and ultimately by politicians and activists into moving our energy economy towards completely unproven energy sources. And it will fundamentally damage human life if they get it wrong. And it does damage human life when they get it wrong. So for every megawatt hour, and that's just a grid number that we throw out, for every megawatt hour of blackout, 3 lives are lost on average in the West. That's because someone at a hospital on life support might die. An old person who needs heat might suffer. The baby who's born premature, if that hospital loses power, that baby loses life. So energy and energy stability is fundamental for human life. So when we talk about the sustainability of Bitcoin mining, we're incentivized to use as much energy to test as many different energy sources as possible and give them the best kind of test, which is baseload, 24/7, 7 days a week. Can this thing be useful for humankind? So on a very top level answer to your question, absolutely Bitcoin mining is sustainable, and it will keep trying to find ways of being sustainable.
I laugh every time people talk about Bitcoin killing babies and boiling oceans, stuff like that, because it's just absurd. And it's the complete opposite. And you summed it up excellently. Bitcoin, not only is it not wasting energy, it's actually driving innovation of all this new technology, the solar and that kind of stuff. And my brother works for I won't say which one, he works for one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world. And they're having an internal debate at the moment, EVs versus hydrogen power. And that's a fascinating debate. But, that debate might go on for like another 10 years. And you've got governments around the world, including the one here, that are actually regulating, saying, no, we want EVs. Like they're actually dictating what the technology should be. I mean, you've got a government telling corporate environment what technology they should use, which is disastrous. Bitcoin doesn't care. It is actually driving the innovation. Yeah. And I think that point that you just made can't be understated, because not only is it not wasting energy, it's actually innovating new sources of better energy. And there is a real chance that Bitcoin could be 100% renewable.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, if we go back to the call it the regulatory environment surrounding fossil fuels anyway, there is, no joke, and let's say no conspiracy theory, a coordinated effort to make fossil fuels incredibly expensive. And it will continue to do so more and more over time, I believe. Unless we get a complete revolution in government, which we all hope for, but seems unlikely at this time, government money, or let's call it the fiat printing of money, is going to make some of these renewable technologies more and more and more inexpensive over time. The amount of government subsidy that's been poured into solar, for instance, has brought the cost of generating a megawatt hour of solar down to about a third of that, which of what it costs to generate a megawatt hour of coal. And so for us as Bitcoin miners, we're just drawn to the incentive structure. It's like, okay, if you're going to artificially make renewable energy so much cheaper, we'll go and use renewable energy. We don't really care. We're drawn to the incentive structure that you put out there. Now, the cool thing about Bitcoin mining, like I said before, is that ultimately we have this uptime demand. We want to be online as much as possible, because every minute that we're online, we can turn energy into capital. Another thing that I say often is Bitcoin mining is the fastest route between energy and capital. Usually if you generate a kilowatt hour of energy, you have to send it out down a really, really long wire, send it to a business. The business has to do something productive. They then have to sell their productive thing. They have to then pay their employees, and then someone gets some capital back, maybe in 25 years' time. If you've ever run a business, you know exactly what I mean. But the thing with Bitcoin mining is we can send the kilowatt hour down the shortest possible cable into some chips, and we have our capital in the world's hardest money straight away. And it sounds kind of magical, but this is literally what Bitcoin mining is fundamentally, after all. And it is willing to take those market risks, and it's willing to push the envelope in any direction that the incentive structure is created. And I think ultimately you can't outcompete the free market for very long. Without getting super hyper partisan, hyper political, but the Soviet Union, probably the world's most call it successful form of command economy, only lasted 80 years of pushing against constant market incentives before the market incentives, human desire to better their lives took over. And the whole thing just collapsed because you can't compete with nature for that long. And Bitcoin's a force of nature.
Doesn't work.
Correct. Correct.
So someone listening to this, they're obviously interested in Bitcoin. They might have some Bitcoin. They might be like, okay, I'm sort of interested in Bitcoin mining. Let's get to where the rubber meets the road. Now, you potentially have a new business venture. Maybe you could go into that. But if someone, and in the past, there have been a lot of scams, to be honest. There's been a lot of cloud mining and all that kind of stuff. So could you perhaps explain the difference between a hobbyist miner, just go out and buy a Bitcoin miner today or something, or using your potential, I don't know what the word is, startup or company?
No. So we're what you would call as a hosting provider. Though we will actually also obviously be doing some of our own mining on the site as well. I mean, why not? If the energy price is good enough and the capital cost is low enough, we're going to make returns. So why wouldn't we do it ourselves? Awesome. Well, I'll start with the hobbyist miner case. So doing mining at home is definitely a little bit more complex than when I first started. You have to take into account the energy cost, which is going to be your biggest monthly expenditure. So I was asked, do you have an energy edge? So do you have some solar? Do you maybe have a group buying deal? I know there's some cooperatives I've heard of in Australia who they kind of got together and negotiated a really good price of power with a retailer. Do you have maybe a business that you could tax write off certain power costs if you ran it at maybe the office or something like that? Along with then some other thinking that you have to start thinking about, like, how am I going to make it quiet? How am I going to live with the kids and the wife? How am I going to deal with the dog sticking his nose into the fan? Do I know someone who can fix it, or am I willing to take the time to learn how to fix it? If you answer yes to pretty much all of those questions, hey, buy a mining rig. It's a really cool hobby. Let's be honest, it's going to potentially make you more money than golf or soccer will, as a hobby. However, with most residential mining operations, it's really difficult to justify them as an actual investment, partly because the likelihood is you will return your capital. You may even make a profit, especially if you've been wise with your energy costs, but they aren't really scalable. I mean, most houses maybe could have 3 mining rigs in them if you had a 3-phase system in most residential systems in the West. So let's be honest, if you're really liking the investment and you want to keep pouring capital into it, you're pretty much limited to 3 mining rigs. So a service like AFI provides, so we provide basically an all-in-one hosting solution. So we have a maintenance team on site. We also have a strategic partner who is pretty much the major manufacturer of, I won't mention them by name because they might not like me doing so, but they are the major manufacturer of mining hardware in the world. So you're very, very close to the source of the actual mining equipment. So therefore we can offer, if not the best, pretty close to the best prices for your capital, in the world. The flip side of that is that we're also been able to do a really awesome deal with the energy providers in South Australia who have been looking for an off-ramp for the excess solar that these smaller solar farms are creating. So that means we can offer about half the price of per kilowatt hour that you would be able to buy energy from in your own home. So if you take an average here in Australia, we're talking about 25 cents per kilowatt hour is actually a really, really good rate. In some places in Queensland and Sydney, we're talking 35 to 40 cents a kilowatt hour at the moment. So our prices are 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So literally more than half. And if you put that into US dollar terms, we're talking about 8 US cents per kilowatt hour. So that's a globally competitive rate. So those are usually the levels that only large industrial miners would be able to demand from their energy providers. So because of those two factors, what we've done is we've gone out our way to create a facility that we want to be as transparent as possible. So we'll be sharing a lot of the progress on social media. We also are going to be, when the farm's all up operating, which should be on July the 1st is our current timeline, although don't hold us to that because problems do happen when you do big projects. So we're actually going to be arranging a Bitcoin mining tour. So if you're just a tourist and you want to come see a Bitcoin mining farm, turn up in Adelaide. There'll be a time and a meeting place. You can get on the bus. We'll give you lunch. You can walk around and see all the loud screaming machines. And if you have a mining rig at the farm, we invite you, hey, come down, come and see it, come and touch it. Unlike the whole idea of, let's say, sending capital off somewhere, overseas, we want to kind of flip the whole mentality of Bitcoin mining needs to be secret, or it needs to kind of somehow be safety and anonymity. Actually, to be honest, if everyone is looking at the same thing very, very closely, this is how Bitcoin works. If everyone's looking at the same information, we can all agree on the same information. So that's kind of how we're really framing up the project. Is, of course, there still has to be a lock gate and some security cameras because we always need there to be eyes on, and we obviously need to know who people are, but we still want to welcome the community who are actually mining into the project. Anyway, what that effectively does is that puts out there a real market opportunity for people who are actually looking at Bitcoin mining as an investment and as something scalable where they can maybe take part of their hodl and put it into Bitcoin mining. Why? I give people this option. If you believe Bitcoin is going to be more valuable in 3 to 5 years' time, Bitcoin mining at the right price with the right power bill is going to be the most efficient way of increasing that stack. And you can increase it passively. You don't have to do it and be hands-on. You don't have to be the one cleaning the machines. You can have that service all rolled in. You can take advantage of what would be a much, much larger operation, even as a little guy.
So with that, Dan, that sounds like we've interviewed a couple of people doing something similar, but that's the first time anyone's been invited to actually go and visit the rigs. So just explain to someone who would be interested in doing this, or I want to buy a rig, it's set up in Adelaide. How do I know that the Bitcoins I'm receiving from fees, from block rewards, how do I know they're going to end up in my wallet? How do I verify that?
Awesome. Yeah. So that's a super simple one. So every machine needs a pool address and a wallet address for it to actually mine. So if you were to buy a machine through AFI, you have to provide us with your wallet address where you would like your Bitcoin sent. Now, if you tap in the pool URL, search your wallet address, you will be able to see at the pool how much hash rate you have, how long it was online for, and that's independent of us. So even if someone online was telling you, hey, no, your rig's definitely online, but you can't see your miner online at the pool, you can independently verify that your miner is online. You can mine straight out of a mining rig straight into a a what do you call it? A cold storage wallet. You can bypass exchanges. And going back to your point, Gordo, earlier about one of the incentives of mining Bitcoin is that you can take KYC'd capital, let's call it, your income, your business's income, or your savings, and you can use mining to turn it into non-KYC Bitcoin. No one necessarily, we don't require KYC documents for the Bitcoin miner itself. No one needs to know what your public wallet address is. The only thing we need to do is be able to configure the Bitcoin to send the miner the coins. And these days, a lot of pool services actually even offer to mask your wallet address. So sometimes a lot of pools will just ask the mining provider for the username. So you can set up your own account with a pool using a private email address, using a public wallet address that you want to keep secure. And all we would see was, let's say, your username. So we'll send it to that pool and that username, and then you can do with the coins what you will from there.
So if the Satoshis are going directly to a wallet from the miners, how are you guys making money?
So we make money essentially by being a power company. So we have obviously negotiated a very, very large and rather expensive power contract, which we obviously commit our capital to buy it, which I tell you is the numbers start to make your eyes water very, very quickly. And so obviously we're able to offer you a really, really good cost of power, but we make our money on having a slightly cheaper cost of power. So that's where our incentive is. So we will send you an invoice once a month for the cost of power. And outside of any non-warranty repairs, like so sometimes your miner will maybe, let's say, break a fan and it'll be outside of the, call it 12-month warranty period. So maybe you might have to pay an extra $20, $25 for someone to fix your mining rig for a minor repair like that. The only bill you'd ever receive would be the cost of power that you've used. So our business is essentially selling you the power and the right to use our facility, which is obviously set up with the whole intention of keeping your miner online as long as possible.
So you actually mentioned two things. One was privacy, and I actually know people who mine Bitcoin at a loss, or at least maybe at cost, purely to get virgin non-KYC Bitcoin. So I think that as most people put that at a footnote. Oh yeah, by the way, you get virgin Bitcoin. That's actually
a huge
for some
point.
People. Yeah, that's probably the main reason why they actually mine. And secondly, Faris, and to play devil's advocate, there are a lot of companies sort of doing some similar things. As Faris mentioned, we've interviewed some people, and I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm just going to list. We have interviewed Gilbert from the Mining Future and Will from SAS Mining. So there are a couple of, and obviously there's Compass Mining, which is sort of a big one in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah.
A lot of people sort of like, well, how do I know that my miner is actually mining and you guys aren't scamming me and it's not just cloud mining numbers on a screen? You've already gone through that. But yeah, the fact that you can specify your own wallet address and you can even specify your own mining pool is so important, because then you're not trusting you. Oh no, we're using our own mining pool, and you'll get paid out whenever we decide to pay you out, sort of thing. So that in itself, if a mining provider allows you to use your own wallet address, that's sort of like, we talked about proof of work. That's sort of like proof of miner. Like that's the proof of my miner's actually mining.
Well, this is, and to be honest, obviously, we're coming into a relatively mature market. You're right. There are actually, I mean, if you Google mining hosting providers, the first page of Google and the second page of Google will probably give you very legitimate companies. So these services do exist already out there. Partly what we're doing to make ourselves unique is we want to add that layer of transparency. And we want to add that layer of being able to flexibly choose. Now, obviously, being a large operation, we get some amazing opportunities for partnerships come up. So, for instance, I won't mention by name yet because we haven't officially announced it, But we've been approached by one of the largest pool providers in the world who have offered us an amazing deal on fees and the potential to use their custom firmware for our mining rigs, which benefits the efficiency of the miner, allows the miner to potentially lower their power bill, gives you a lot of, like, there's a whole lot of real big pros to using their firmware. So we will obviously have an incentive because we have a partnership with them. They give us kickbacks for pointing hash rate at their service, but that means we can pass on the same deal to the customer at the end of the day. It's like, hey, if you actually mine to our pool or mine to the pool that we've been given, the potential to earn more Bitcoin compared to you mining to, let's say, another pool where you're paying 2.5-3% for your fees, or even 1.5%, we can provide you a lower cost to mine, which is a small fee that everyone will pay, regardless of it. So I suppose that's the benefit of coming into a larger ecosystem. At the same time, if you desperately want to use the same pool that you've always used before, we can hold our hands up and say, sure. It's your mining. You own this hardware. This is your hardware. Yes, you obviously signed up to leave it at our site for a certain number of months. Starting from 12 months, probably going all the way forward to 36 months if you really want to lock up for that long. But ultimately, this is still your piece of equipment. And actually, I will mention this because it's another really interesting feature, which, when thinking about Bitcoin mining investment, it's such a really interesting idea. Through our partnership with the manufacturer, we're pretty much going to be the first business in the world to offer miner-backed loans against hardware. And this is a pretty kind of crazy idea, because essentially this creates leverage on Bitcoin mining for an individual customer. So you've probably heard about a lot of, let's say, large industry players being able to take out loans against their mining rigs, which caused a whole load of problems because they took out these massive loans at the bull market prices when miners were $20,000 each. Now the market price of those miners is maybe $2,500 each, and probably half of that because they're now used. So they're left very underwater. However, when we're making a loan against a new miner at the bottom of a market, there really is the potential both for miner appreciation and Bitcoin appreciation. So some of that's still TBC, but essentially we will be going to market with the possibility of basically taking out an equipment loan for a second miner for every miner you purchase. So, for instance, a 1-to-1, cash to leverage ratio, or 50% loan to value ratio, I think, in the professional finance world.
So, Daniel, what would be the delay or time frame from when you buy your miner to it's up and running and it's you can start seeing Satoshis coming in?
Not 6 weeks. I will let you know that. So we actually want to drive that time down as fast as we can. Now, obviously, there's certain technical restraints. Once the farm is 100% live, we're targeting 24 hours or less.
Sorry, say it again. Like, from the time you actually put your money down to get a miner, it's up and running in 24 hours or less?
Or less. We want to get to the point where it could happen same day or within minutes. So partly with our relationship, we will already have miners ready to go on the shelf, ready to be turned over to you straight away. So the hash rate is there, ready to go. So you'd be assigned a serial number. That's your particular mining rig. Give us your pool and address details, and then it's on. Because obviously we've got an incentive. The sooner you start paying your bill, the sooner we can start selling you electricity. So this is, I think this is one thing we really want to do to upend the mining, the hosting industry, let's call it that, become really user focused, which is, hey, why should we not have miners ready to go? If you want to come and buy a mining rig and it's there and it's sitting there, like, it gets really gray. Like, we should have done our planning long enough to have miners waiting for you. And the only time that we would expect a customer to wait is if it's really obvious that we're going to do a pre-order. So for instance, we are actually going to be opening pre-orders for this first site in South Australia. So there'll be some incentives to help people get on board. Potentially, we haven't yet firmly decided whether it's going to be a discount to the capital cost of the miner or it's going to be a discount to the ongoing power cost. We're kind of favoring more a discount to the ongoing power cost because that becomes your profitability floor, as we've already talked about. So you'll be able to mine for longer, which we think's going to incentivize more people. But it's like the only time you'd have to wait is it's really obvious. It's like, hey, you're getting a better deal because you're pre-buying the hash rate. You're waiting until that farm, comes online. Once a product is live and it's there and it's sitting on the website, click a button, pay your money, have your miner. That we want to make that process as smooth as possible.
Well,
it sounds too good to be true, but
for people who have,
we've been talking about this as a team for a lot, and it was like that's our USP. Alongside all the other things, we want to get there. We want to get there.
Do you accept Bitcoin as payment?
We will absolutely accept Bitcoin as payment. So the reason, so I've been for the last few. For the last few months, obviously, I've been working with a company called HashX, which is obviously how I got the connection to Bitcoin Alive. So AFI is actually it's a joint venture between HashX, and again, it's all public information, between HashX and then a Bitcoin exchange based in Brisbane called CoinStash. So the partnership with the exchange with CoinStash has been really beneficial in the fact that it allows us to accept crypto payments of all kinds because they've already got all of that infrastructure in place. Allows us to have a lot more back-end infrastructure than a standard hosting facility would. So our development has been really smooth. And then the other side of things is they already have the AFSL and the right licensing to be able to offer the loan facilities and things like that for people. So obviously, look, there is a doxing process that you go through if you want to apply for a loan. But it's, again, no one need know that particular miner is you except you. So you can still maintain the privacy aspect, even for the process of going through a loan. So that's how we're able to offer some of the more complicated, let's call it, features. And partly, look, an exchange. The guys who have come from CoinStash have been really fantastic because they come from a very user-centric background. It's a very competitive world, the world of exchanges. It's all about how fast is your execution time, how quickly can I get my money in and out, how good is my user experience, when I'm dealing with the platform. And so moving that forward into the mining space, why shouldn't we disrupt it? Look, our play is by building these amazing infrastructure options, and it's in our name, Australian Fintech Infrastructure. So we want to build the best possible infrastructure for miners, utilizing the best possible energy that we can for mining, and that is our real play. We're not interested in delaying you being online or anything like that.
Well, speaking of waiting, I'm still waiting for my Butterfly Labs miner from back in 2015. So I'm fairly patient, but it makes sense. I mean, it's like signing up for email or cloud storage. You don't sign up for it and then you wait 3 weeks or whatever. It makes sense, and it really brings. And you guys are ahead of the game. Really brings mining as a service. So we used to, software as a service and platform as a service, and even 20 years ago, companies were building all their own infrastructure. You'd have a massive IT department with, 100 servers. And I used to work for a bank and they had literally 10,000 servers. And now they outsource most of it and they third parties. And I'm actually all about self-hosting. So in 99.99% of cases, I want to self-host because I want to own my own data. I don't want to rely on the cloud. But with Bitcoin mining, I'm actually not. That's actually okay because you guys are providing the security, the electricity, everything. and I can use my own wallet. So I'm not, worried that you guys are going to run away with my funds or anything like that. So in every case except for Bitcoin mining, I'm all for self-hosting. So it really is the evolution of this next service, mining as a service. I mean, that to me, that makes perfect sense.
And I think that's it. Is like, look, we of course are a Bitcoin mining company. We actually have, obviously, as part of our kind of whole strategy, a part of the farm that will be owned by us, that will be assigned to AFI. One of the products, again, that the part of the team have been working on really, really heavily, and probably come out towards the end of the year, is a proper registered unit trust as a Bitcoin mining investment trust. So that's designed, like, squarely aimed at larger, more institutional investors. It's the kind of thing where a super fund would be able to invest in Bitcoin mining, so that kind of thing. So to do that, obviously, we need to have a portion of the farm that actually needs to be our own. So we consider it good enough to put our own capital into. The major play, obviously, for selling the kind of parts of the farm that we can to smaller investors is obviously to build the customer base more broadly, rather than rely on one or two more massive customers to spend it. So for us, being able to provide one person at a time with a single mining rig is absolutely awesome. It doesn't really take that more or less staff to run the farm. It's not even more or less management at a given level, because it's your wallet that it's going into. Unfortunately, if you get your wallet address wrong, I can't help you. Always use copy and paste and double check before you press send. So it's so it's just an important kind of feature that we think is like, look, we think from a customer service perspective. What would people ideally like? How can we make it easier for people to get into Bitcoin mining? And how can we make it more of a trusted investment? Because ultimately, I think Bitcoin is an amazing investment. I have the majority of my net worth locked up in Bitcoin. I'm pretty much a single asset guy. I don't own any stocks, don't own any shares, don't own any property. I own Bitcoin. And for me, Bitcoin mining is that opportunity to compound my Bitcoin wealth over time. So doing that is like, hey, how can I make this the best possible kind of investment for other people?
So just a beat a dead horse, we also have just embarked on a new project, a new podcast called My Privacy. And so for those people who can do it, for example, most people, can't install their own Linux server and have a Linux server in the basement, stuff like that. For 99.99% of other people, they use cloud storage, whether that's Dropbox
Absolutely.
or whatever it is. So I see this as sort of the evolution, and that's super interesting. So for someone who wants to get started, two things. One is, you mentioned for your loan product, you'd need some KYC, but forgetting about that for a second, if someone just wanted to start with one miner, what KYC do they have to go through, and what's the minimum? If someone wants to sign up right now, how do they get started?
Sure. Well, so our website, which is live, is ausfintech.com. So that's AUSFINTECH.com. Again, they can produce an order. One of our team will reach out to them and obviously finalize everything. At the moment, we haven't got card payments working, partly because they love to charge glorious fees. So we have to do some work and some negotiation there. But that's going to be the main point of contact. We are on all social media now, which is pretty awesome. So we obviously can reach out to us through messages and through any DM on any of those. So we've got a team that looks after that. The major selling point is that the MOQ is one. We don't care if you want to come to us and buy 100 or you want to buy a single unit. The process is going to be the same. We will get you an invoice, it'll get paid, and then you can upload, give us your pool details, your mining address and or your pool ID so that we can know how to configure the machine, and you can start mining.
Awesome. For as little as
for as little as the market rate of a Bitcoin mining machine. So I joke. In general, the first farm that we're doing is going to be supplied exclusively with the Bitmain S19 XP mining machines. So the market price for those is about the 6,000 Australian dollar. So call that 4,500 USD mark. So that is really going to be the entry price at this first farm. There is a plan to offer other products as we expand. So we have a pipeline of about 20 megawatts worth of mining over the next 6 months. So the only thing limiting that at the moment is just the power PPA. So the first 5 megawatts is going live in the next month or so. So that there is roughly just the process of starting. So realistically, your MOQ is about 6,000 Australian dollars.
Daniel, I'm just looking at the site now, and if you go to buy a miner, it has shipped to a different address. Now, is hosting just optional, or if I buy this, I'm actually going to be receiving a miner?
Again, we definitely have some kinks to work out with the website, which is currently under. So the ship to is purely going to be one address, and it's going to be one address only. So hosting definitely is a requirement to purchase through. Again, the pricing is updated live. So obviously some of the prices will have changed. So I think as we record this podcast, we're not technically live in pre-order. So what you're getting is to see a little behind the scenes of where we're starting from. So yeah, we have to work out a way of taking, partly because it's obviously we don't control some of the internals of that portal. We need to work out a way of having ship to a ship to taken out. It's just a billing address that we need.
Yeah, cool.
Well, there's one ship to address, and that's your mining farm.
Correct,
basically. Which
it'll already be there. So it won't necessarily need the shipping. So yeah, as I say, foundationally, the website and social media is where we're really gonna we're obviously really gonna be able to get the right information. Obviously, at the moment, again, there's just some kind of dummy details. We've been playing around with a couple of different products in there. But I was going to say, all being well, by the go live date, you'll literally be able to see the one product, be able to provide any of the details that you need. So we obviously do need to take some details from a person. I mean, just enough to be able to issue an invoice. So usually it's just a billing address, a name, and an email address. But I think also we do require a telephone number to call you. But that's purely because you will actually, at least in the early stages, you will actually obviously speak to someone. You'll have someone at the other end of the phone who can actually take your inquiries, answer your questions. And obviously we will probably have a couple of things to confirm with you as well.
Awesome. I mean, in this day and age of KYC, you got to expect a little bit of information that you have to give. But at the end of the day, you're not requiring a photo ID or any kind of that sort of stuff. So that's not
again. Yeah, absolutely. Look, so for the only time you require ID is obviously when you have to when you're basically applying for credit. And that's the only caveat with that, the time that we would require photo ID. So let's say for the privacy, for the privacy focused people, which is, I 100% understand, is actually a big reason to get into Bitcoin, considering the amount of surveillance that there is in our current financial system. Even once it's done so, no one need to know that that serial numbered, machine is yours. And that is your private information. And it would be very, very difficult, let's say, for an external person to discover that that is your particular machine, unless they could somehow discover your private wallet address, which I think, as we already discussed, a lot of pool services now offer a public address masking service where they can mask it with an anonymous username. So there's no way to link it back to you directly, even if you were to finance a mining rig.
Cool. I was going to ask what happens if the government requires that stuff, but that's going down another rabbit hole.
Well, look, if the government requires that stuff, I think we'll have a few other problems on our hands as well.
Exactly. Soup cans and guns, just by that.
Exactly.
Now we've gone way over time, and we appreciate your time so much.
No, that's okay.
Is there anything that we should have asked you, or anything you want to shill, or concluding statements or anything?
Yeah, like anything I want to shill. Honestly, if I can shill Bitcoin mining a little bit more, look, whether it's you come to us, to work out a deal, whether it's you go and look into it for yourself and have a miner at home. I actually really encourage people, if you can have a miner at home and play around with it as a hobby, it's an amazing hobby. But Bitcoin lives and dies on the health of its mining network. If you took away mining tomorrow, Bitcoin would be valueless. It wouldn't be connected to the real world and connected to energy. So the fundamental thing I can shill is, whatever you are doing, if you are a Bitcoiner, if you are hodling your own Bitcoin, if you don't intend to move that Bitcoin for an extended period of time, really consider Bitcoin mining as a way of compounding that Bitcoin into more. You are doing two things. You're supporting the network, and you are almost doubly enforcing your hodling, because it's not like you even have the Bitcoin to get rid of in a real emergency situation. And
I can agree with that more. Sorry, Daniel, because we always say DCA, and the problem is when it's so easy to move Bitcoin around within minutes, the temptation to trade it, to do this and that is there. Whereas if it's a miner that's running somewhere, you're treating it like a term deposit. It's just kicking over, and you're not thinking of it. Yeah,
because Bitcoin. No, that's so awesome, because again, I think you probably would have heard this from me in Sydney, but Bitcoin mining is DCAing on steroids. It's enforced DCAing. It's you are committing to be paid Bitcoin every day, or every minute of every day that you're online. And the cool thing is that usually by paying a power bill, you're getting more Bitcoin in return than you would normally be able to pay for on an exchange. Remember, the exchange price of Bitcoin has my markup as a miner. You have to bribe me above the market price of my energy for me to exchange my Bitcoin for your fiat. You have to offer me enough fiat for me to think the deal is worthwhile when you go and buy it on an exchange. And that's the game theory of mining. The game theory of mining is that I can swap a smaller power bill for more Bitcoin every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention it's private, non-KYC passive income.
All the other features.
The added benefits. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Daniel. And we really appreciate your time. If we would be so bold to ask you on again and see how you guys are going. And I might pop over to Adelaide for is it in Adelaide or whereabouts in South Australia?
It's actually just outside, so it's about an hour outside of Adelaide. So it's right out in the middle of nowhere, like far away from any humans to bother, and any eyesores and neighbours to complain. So it's right out in the country, down the coast. About do you know where Kadina is? Kind of out towards some of the small country towns. So I think there's going to be a really cool story crop up around this. So I would love to come back, maybe in a few months' time when it's all I can turn the camera on with the solar farm in my back, and we can have a chat about how it's all going.
I can see a new, we've got eco tourism. I could see a new Bitcoin mining tourism. You could have, tours of the farm and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and this is partly where we looked at it is like actually there's a huge opportunity here to spread the word of like this is number one an awesome emerging industry while having transparency and the ability for people to mine profitably.
Absolutely. Faris, you got any last questions?
No, I'm out. I was really impressed with Daniel at Bitcoin Alive because he had to explain mining Bitcoin inside of 8 minutes, and I thought he did an incredible job, which is why I was keen to have him on.
Do you want to know the funny? And I'll finish on this one. The funny story about that event was I think I'd been sent an agenda, and I think I'd noted in my head that I had 40 minutes. So I obviously planned for about 30 minutes of talking and 10 minutes of questions. Arrive on the day, and the wonderful lady who's organizing the speakers lets me know, it's like, so you'll have about 20 minutes. So suddenly my preparation went to how much I need to cut out to give people the right idea. So if it communicated across what Bitcoin mining is, and got that across, that was really, really awesome. So that's so encouraging to hear.
I definitely did.
Thank you for your kind words.
No worries, man. Thank you very much for coming on, Daniel. Yeah, we look forward to seeing how you guys progress, and keep up to date with us.
Not a worry. No, I can't wait. And we'll definitely be in touch. It's been fun.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Daniel. Cheers, mate.
Catch you.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information and please contact us.